So, good afternoon or good evening, everybody. And when you have the last session in a conference, you're always worried that you and the people on the stage will be the only people in the audience. So first, I really appreciate that you were staying until this last session. And I believe that it's going to be an interesting session because after the couple of days of discussion, we're coming to a point where at the end of the day, we are doing clinical studies on human being, and there are the ethical committees, or as we call them here in Israel, the Helsinki Committee, but it's actually the IRB committees. And we wanted to have a discussion about the role, and of course, we would like the audience to be involved, and we will have time for you to ask questions. One thing I have to tell you that we have to close the session at 5 o'clock, so we'll try to go very quickly. And I'll go from the right here. Each of you will say a couple of words about himself, and then we'll go on so that you will know who they are on the panel.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I think it is a magnificent session and the magnificent presentations that we have been presented here for the last 3 days. We are getting slowly but surely to a new world in medicine, not only in medicine, but our concern is medicine, and we are already there. We have to admit that all our IRB all around the world are based on the, physicians. We also have lawyers, we have pharmacists, but basically most of the work and evaluation and survey of the new drugs or facilities that is introduced into the medicine is so that we can still understand whatever the pharmaceutical companies or the startup all around the world are presenting to us in order to improve medicine and, of course, the health of our patients. But the problem has been very, very widely presented here is that the data which will base the new evaluation, the new innovations and the new scheme and the new facilities that will be presented to us in the future will be based on computers, on data engineering, on artificial data, big data, all the things that we already heard. And none of the doctors being educated have any skill to deal with this part of science. So but we will have to change the whole organization, I think, and to produce a committee, IRB committees, that we will have obligatory engineering, obligatory computer expertise, and all other tasks that may be introduced to us, and for sure will be. And we already see at the present time that sometimes we have the difficulties to understand and to evaluate properly what is presented to us from the, especially from the computerized world. We also will have to get engineers, we have to have computer specialists to evaluate and to give us the right data that we will be able to understand and evaluate for the benefit of the patients. We will also have to get lawyers that will be specialized in this area of the computer, artificial data, and all this stuff. And of course, on the back of the Ministry of Health, and as we already have now, we will have to have a backup and also support and to get from them everything we can have in order to keep our patients safe in what we will be presented to work with, and to be sure that we really understand and we are not harming the patients.
Thank you, Ilan. And just say a few words about who you are so that the people will know.
Good afternoon. Yeah, nice. I'm Catherine Hela, and I'm... This will be better? Yeah, it's much more better. Thank you. So I'm Catherine Hela, and I'm the director of the clinical trial departments in the Ministry of Health. as just to give maybe a small answer to what you said, Ilan. When we started to speak about big data in the Ministry of Health and how to facilitate the research in this field, we asked ourselves if we need one ethics committees or if we need to have something which is different, which will be a committee, but not with the same functions that are common in ethics committees. And we thought that the right thing to say to do is to go on with the existing ethics committee. In Israel, we have ethics committees in each hospitals, and to add different functions, just like people which are specialists in the field of computers, in the field of privacy of the patient, in the field of artificial intelligence, and so on. That means that to have the same basic ethics committee, not to have something totally new, and to add new function to this ethics committee. So that's it for the moment.
Okay, my name is Shlomo Berliner. I am the head of the IRB, the Helsinki Committee in the Tel Aviv Medical Center. Basically, I am an MD PhD, and this is because I believe that everyone who works in the field of medicine should be also a basic researcher. And my personal mentor is Ignaz Semmelweis, the famous gynecologist who, without having a PhD, made a tremendous observation that the physicians who come following post-mortem from the Department of Pathology and treat the ladies who come to give birth bring the streptococci, and then he started to convince everybody to wash hands. And you know the remaining history. We still have a long way to go with medical research, because if I ask myself what did we achieve by now, not so many tasks, because still we have a lot of diseases, a lot of human suffering, and this is the reason why I understand that we have to push all the people who work in the hospital to observe, to ask, to try, to think. Only in this way we will find out additional therapies that will help us to improve our health.
Hi everyone. I'm Dr. Leer Goldstein. I'm the head of the IRB at the Emek Medical Center. That's a small hospital in Afula. I'm also head of an internal medicine department at the same hospital. I'm a fan of ethics, so I'm in the ethics committee of the Israel Medical Association, and I think that's just about all that's relevant for this conference.
So first, I didn't want to start a discussion, but I'm a polite person. I just wanted everybody to say who they are, because we can lead things and talk for an hour on artificial intelligence, an hour on data, and that's, I believe, not the whole aim of this thing. And by the way, I think the doctors don't know everything. And when someone presents something in electrophysiology, I need the expert in electrophysiology, not just data we don't know. We don't know a lot of things. But one of the things that we know that part of the ethics is common sense and your knowledge and how you extrapolate it elsewhere. And the best example is what we had with the corona. The committee that we had ad hoc at the Biomedical Center was about 20 people, all together, from every field, because we didn't know what we are facing. So we actually called people from almost every field. But I want to ask a major question to the panel. Why do we do clinical trials? Why do we do experiments on human beings?
Well, I would feel very, very unconfident treating my patients with anything without knowing that it's going to work and without knowing what the harms and the benefits are of giving that treatment to my patient. I will also have to, of course, explain to them. And how would I explain to them the harms and the benefits just by saying, I have a hunch that this might work, let's try it and see what happens? No, that's not the way we practice medicine. So for me, it is essential to do research on, medical research on human subjects in order to make it much better, much easier for me to treat my patients. And it's really it's from the basics of research until from the basics part of research to interventional research, checking myself to see that what I'm doing is good, checking how good I'm doing it. I think it's just basic to have medical research on human subjects, like I actually think it's basic to have research on animals, because you can't try something on a human being before you've tried it on an animal. For me, it's just clear as the blue sky that you have to carry on doing research on medical research on human beings, and we have to carry on judging ourselves on how are we doing it ethically, and is it okay the way we're doing it, and that we have to carry on doing all the time.
There is no question we need to do research on our patients, because still there is a difference between what we see in vivo and what we see ex vivo and what we see on animals. In the history of medicine, you acknowledge that even though several medications were tested on animals, actually the final result in human beings was different. And we did see teratogenicity, carcinogenicity, despite not seeing in certain animals. So this is a must. I don't think that anybody in the world will believe that you can introduce into the market technologies or medications that were not well tested according to what we now process actually in clinical medicine, a small size number study, and then you go on and go on. And still, even after extensive studies, we see the results following a couple of years and understand that maybe it doesn't work as we thought it should work. So despite having a system of research in human beings, we have still a way to go and improve those studies in order to get to the market safe and with full proof.
I won't let all of us answer the same question, because otherwise we won't go to everything. I'll give it to you, but I want to add to this. Let's think about what we normally did in early phase 1, when we have a compound that we never tested in human being, and the way we used to do it was in healthy volunteers. Now the trend is going toward doing it on the patients that actually have the disease. It's more risky, it's more complex. On the other hand, they are the ones that are going to enjoy from it, or at the end of the day, if there will be a drug. What do you think about it?
Oh, I think this is an excellent question. You know, in the Ministry of Health, in my division, we are dealing with all kinds of clinical trials. That means we're dealing with medical devices as well as drugs. As you would never ask this question when if you've thought about medical devices, because it is obvious that you're not going to transplant cardiac valves in a patient that is a healthy patient. So in these fields, it's so obvious. It's the same thing with advanced therapies. With drugs, because we want to be very, very careful, and this is one more answer to why we need clinical trial, because the regulation is so strict. Speaking about drugs, there is a risk analysis. That means that if there is the drug is not supposed to be so harmful for the patient, we started with a healthy patients, and just afterward, when we are sure that there is at least safety which is more or less sufficient, we can go on with illness patients. But this is, I really believe that it is only because we are so careful about the safety of the patients, and that we want to make sure that, first of all, the safety of the population is established. So I think this is really the why it's so important to have clinical trial, because it's not possible to go from animals to the whole population without being careful.
When we give a medication, a new medication tested to a healthy person, he is healthy, can cope with the medicine in different way than a diseased patient his body is already not functioning very well. He's been exposed to different medication before he was recruited for the study. So for sure we can expect the very, very big difference in the evaluation and the expectation from the body of a diseased patient comparing to a healthy one. So it's imperative to look in the diseased patient and to see how they benefit or not benefit, and the side effects, and to see what is the equation, if it is better to the patient or worse, and what is being mentioned in, and not few medications that have been released to the market, and post-marketing has been found out that they have problems that have been taken out from use. So it's imperative to do it in patients, and we do in all the stages with 2 and 3, and then to many patients, just to be sure about it, to have good statistics in order to get the final evaluation.
I will say just one thing. Whoever does biology, and biology is complex, and you do an animal study, and by the way, there are people that think that we shouldn't even do an animal studies, but we can get to it. But we do an animal study, and you do the first one, and you get A. Then you do the second one, and sometimes you get B. And nobody will publish a paper unless you repeated it 3 times, and you got everything. Now, we do experiments in human being, and we do one big study, and that's it. And maybe the biology is complex, and maybe we would get a little bit different things, but we can't solve the whole issue. But I want to ask the audience, what do you think is the role of the IRB committee? Who are we trying to protect, in your mind? Anybody that volunteered to answer this question? Go ahead, Hagai.
Well, to me, it's very clear. We aim to protect the public health. It's not only the health of the specific participants of the IRB. It's not only the researchers who are doing the research themselves, because our role as IRB committee is also to defend them, is not only the organization where we work, which we also protect the organization. Public health encompasses all this together. It's a system. It's our role to, in a way, what I think would help me as a member of the IRB committee is we need to speak truth to the people with power. That's the same again. And what is missing, and I'm hearing this wonderful discussion, is in the end, I think it's about democracy. It's about that the ruling should be of the people. Now, it's very complicated in medicine, in research, because most people don't know enough to make decisions in these complex issues. Even us are struggling with every study with so new science and everything. But still, in the end, if we are able to put the people at the center and let the people, or to reflect what people want in the decision making, then we would be very better off. Unfortunately, and I want to remind the elephant in the room and also to say that I'm afraid when we speak about 2050, I'm afraid that we are heading to a dystopia, because nowadays we are, in a lot of sense, we are just carried away with what research is done by the profit, the needs of the drug industry, and not enough what the public needs. And in this sense, I think that the direction should be, and I think the IRB committee should be part of that, the direction should be that we should do much more research on, as you said, like post-marketing surveillance, but much more research that is just on what is done in any case. We just should evaluate what is done in a hospital today, in a healthcare system. We should do much more evaluation of what is actually done, and then we would need much less clinical trials. Maybe we don't need as much clinical trials. There is a new drug. We will start using it, and we will evaluate as we use it. I don't know how to do it, but I'm just saying that's...
I'm glad that you don't know how to do it, because at the end of the day, you can see that things that are going in the paramedicine and doing it this way, when you evaluate them, sometimes they're causing more harm, and as a physician, it's always an issue. Should I give something because I believe in it? Should I give something because I know it's going to help? Medicine changed in a way that we try to give what... I hate the words evidence-based medicine, because even the evidence-based is not that great. But I missed something in what you were saying, and that's how do you protect the public if you don't protect the study itself? And when you protect the study itself, you have to protect the sponsor as well. I'll give an example. If one wants to do a study on Parkinson's disease, and the inclusion criteria are that you can take everybody that have a tremor, we will have a lot of patients that don't have Parkinson. They have essential tremor. The result of the study won't be valid at all, and you won't be able to treat. So what I'm trying to get is that we are not protecting just the subject. When you were saying, rightfully, we protect the public health, we have to protect the sponsor, we have to protect everybody, and it's a complex story. And it's bringing me to another point that you were mentioning, democracy. So we have a drug, it's not proven yet. Should we have an access program, as they call it in the United States, or should we have a compassionate program here in Israel? What is your opinion? What is the pros and cons of having something like that? Start with you this time.
I have this one. Well, I think we don't have much options, because we facing from time to time patients who reaching dead end. Nothing we can offer them. They just going to die. And we know, the specialist, of course, I'm not my expertise, I'm a gynecologist, so infertility, so in a different world. But we receive in our IRB in the hospital, Meir Hospital, a request to approve and to give permission to use such drugs that nothing can offer to the patient. And there have been some publication on one or two patients in the States or in Europe that most probably can be relied on. So I don't think we have nothing to lose. And if there will be more and more patients using this drug, and then eventually they will see that it is beneficial, then they will conduct a research, and maybe the medication will be adopted as a medication for everyday usage.
Catherine is a regulatory person. What do you think about, and actually the US started the Success program after the story of the breast cancer ladies that came to the gate of Genentech and forced the American government to allow them to use the drug before it was approved and saved their lives. So sometimes the public know what they want and what they need. So, but it's a complex issue.
Okay, yes. First of all, I would like to say, maybe to refine, that according to the Helsinki Declaration, the role of an ethics committee is, first of all, to protect the individual patient and not the public. And if you have to make a decision between the right of a patient and the right of the public, you have, first of all, to take into consideration the safety of a specific patient. And I think that it's quite important to understand that. I agree with Dror. To protect sometimes the companies and the sponsor is also important. For example, in Israel, we really want to encourage good clinical trials, quality clinical trials to be conducted in Israel. It's important. I do not mind if it's important for the sponsor or not, but finally to have in Israel important and clinical trials of quality is essential for our patients. So that is one point. Concerning compassionate use, it's a much more complicated problem. Because that's right, in Israel we have guidelines concerning compassionate use, which is not so well written, but we have the possibility to give compassionate use on an individual basis and with on a small number of patients. This is what it is. But you know, just take, for example, what happened during the COVID pandemic. We saw on the TV new medical products that really were fantastic, help people to overcome the COVID in 2-3 days. And we had to manage with so many conflict of interests and companies that wanted to give this compassionate use to the patient without any data. It was obvious that there is nothing under these technologies. But the media told, okay, this is our right to have this product, even though it's not its efficacy is not demonstrated. We heard that it helps some people, and we want it. You know, it was really the use of the vulnerability of these patients by companies that were more interested in just don't from of what.
You are completely right. And by the way, I'll give you in a moment, one of the things that happened in the corona, that the Ministry of Defense came in. And they have a lot of innovation. They inventing a lot of things. And they actually apply what they are doing into the medicine. How many good things came out of it? Zero. Why? Because they don't have, although we have a lot of things that can be done better, but we are much more careful in one way, and we understand that theoretical things are theoretical things. It doesn't mean it will really work in human being. And that was a major issue. That's what frightened me from the artificial intelligence, big data. In medicine, small mistake can kill a lot of people. and you have to be very careful. Not that we don't cause harm with our medications, let's face it. But at least we are testing it first and trying to see what will help and what won't help. And there is a lot of pressure. But when someone else came, completely different discipline, we had this experiment on human being. It does not work. And that was part of this thing in the media because people were sitting like this, I can't forget it, from the Weizmann Institute, excellent place, but know nothing about medicine. And they were saying that we already solved the issue. We already solved it on our computer, guys. You just don't understand. You will go, you blow your breath, some air, and we'll know if you're sick or not. It's easy, it's 2 seconds. For us, it was clear it's not going to work. So we have to be very careful, and it's a learning curve, but I'll give it to you because I think that this issue of compassionate use or access is really critical.
I just want, I will say about the compassionate, but I just want to say that the Helsinki, for me, we are the patient's trustees. If a patient could read all I read and understand most of, and make an intelligent decision about the risks and the benefits of participating in a clinical trial, the Helsinki Committee would be obsolete, in my opinion. But as the patient cannot read everything I read, understand everything we as a committee understand, and weigh the benefits and the risks and the benefits, that's why we need a committee. Now, when we come to compassionate use of drugs, I can understand if a patient is on their deathbed, and the COVID was, some of our patients were on their deathbed. They were going to die within a day or two. And if some brilliant company said we have some brilliant solution that might work, and if the patient or the patient's family read everything there is to read about it, exactly the same as I did, and took an informed decision which was not a usual situation, I must say that even me as a IRB committee, sometimes I said yes to these things because it's very difficult to say no, even ethically, to something that you don't know. So that's just about compassionate use, that sometimes I think it's okay, even if we have less data, but if we do have the minimum data, and it depends, of course, of the patient's condition and the risks we are taking, I think sometimes it's okay. Compassionate use is okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That means that compassionate use may be very important, but we have to understand that, I just give the example of the COVID. It was an abuse, a real abuse, and there was hysteria, really. We were all of us were hysteric. The Ministry of Health, the doctors, and the patients. And there was huge pressure on, in Israel, you have to get the authorization of the Ministry of Health in order to conduct, and the authorization of the HESI committee in order to conduct a compassionate use. And during the corona, it was obvious that it is there is abuse. That means drugs without any logical and any proof of their efficacy, of their safety, was supposed to save us from COVID. And it was obvious that it was because of the company's pressure. So I just want to say, I'm not against compassionate use, but we have to be very careful about that.
As an IRB member, one of the tasks is to push the harder you can to evidence-based medicine, because we have to learn from history. Actually, the first physician who gave quinidine to a patient because of an irregular rhythm didn't have any knowledge about the first patient that was given the medication. And from there on, without looking at any evidence, we had for many years a medication called quinidine that we gave for atrial fibrillation. It started with a Vienna cardiologist who had a patient who went to Africa and got quinidine in order to prevent malaria. And when he came back to Vienna, he told his cardiologist, listen, I have no palpitation anymore. From there on, cardiologists started to administer a medication without any study. I remember, as a young physician, a lady who came in to the ER was given quinidine because of atrial fibrillation, and 1 hour later, the family came into the ER when she was discharged and went home. The family came back to the ER and looked for the physician who gave the medication because unfortunately the lady had a sudden cardiac death at home. So this was a significant lesson for me what evidence-based medicine means. You know, nobody can buy today in the pharmacy quinidine. You won't find it anymore because one study that was done properly showed that this medication increases mortality. You know, I had to learn about digoxin, the same story. Nobody is using practically digoxin that we used for 200 years. Hormonal replacement therapy. It was probably in the past history of gynecologists in America was probably a malpractice not to administer a lady HRT when she had menopause. And only 2 evidence-based studies showed that this is not the same story as we thought. So I think IRBs should push for evidence-based medicine. Although Dror mentioned that it is not always perfect, we should aim at perfectionism.
First, just a little story. I'll let you ask a question. I came back to Israel from the state, and at that time, ladies was getting hormonal replacement therapy. And I was saying there is no evidence for that, but I was a lipid guy, the atherosclerosis guy, at the Seker Menahalim at Sheba. I was supposed to preach for it because it's prevent cardiovascular events. And I was saying, but it's increased thromboembolic events. So how do we know? And there was a big fight between the gynecologist, the OBGYN doctors, and me, and coming from the state, young doctor, how do you dare? Luckily enough, 2 months later, the paper came. And then, but the issue is that, yes, we need evidence-based medicine. I let you ask a question, and then I want to say that there is a difference in the word access and the word compassionate. When we talk compassionate here, we talk about dying patient and that we have to let a father that has an idea how to save his son with a brain tumor. By the way, he had a brilliant idea. Now a company did it with Merck with multiple immunization for cancer. He did it to his brain tumor child, and you help us to allow him to do it. It was one patient experiment, but he and his wife had the right to do it. And actually they were right in this case, but not always they're right. But Access program is much more than this. Access program is, we already passed phase 2. Now a lot of people coming and saying, we have cancer, or we have a disease, that in 3 years we won't be here. That's our prognosis. It's going to take you 5 years to put it on the market. We want the right from the companies to get it in the price that it costs them to make it. That's the Access program in America. And we want the drug. We don't care that you want a big trial right now. And actually, right now, companies have the duty, if they don't have an Access program, to say why they don't have on their website. It's either they don't have enough of the drug and whatever, but the right of the patient or the subject is that they have the right to look at the data and say, I want this drug. You had a question, and from now on, we let the audience ask the questions. We talked enough.
So two in brief about the access programs or compassionate programs. I'm more concerned not with opening the gate, but opening the gate without proper collection of data. For example, in the COVID, we would prescribe remdesivir because the pharmaceutical company would give it for free for the hospital. Put aside whether it was right or wrong, but doing it without full-fledged research, some collection of data, I think it was unethical to do. And any compassionate care use, to ask access for a drug that has no basis, but refuse monitoring of basic data, I found it problematic. This is one thing. Second, about what Professor Berliner said before, that when we are talking about prevention of cancer, cardiovascular disease, these big studies are the gold standards, we may say. When we talk about digoxin and heart failure, for example, it's a clinical drug. You have the exceptions. We all know there are some patients that do well, that manage well. And this is the personalized medicine without the big hype around it. And the same is about diuretics, or certain kinds of diuretics, or vasopressors to diuretize patients with extreme heart failure. So we must be open to this, not close the door, and still we have a duty, I think, to find ways to systematize information about it, because I think it's against human dignity to treat patients with no attempt at rationalization as much as we can. So we do something we are not sure about, it may happen, but to create a situation that at the end we do not learn from it anything, I think is immoral.
This is a crucial point and an important one. By using medications in patients, we do learn to find out the personalized medicine and to find out who is the appropriate patient with a special disease in a certain point of time who will benefit. Okay? When the company started to give dronedarone, many patients got it. Nowadays, a small size of patients in certain situations get it. So this is the art of doing research, finding out from the whole group who is exceptional.
I'll tell you an example when we collected important data in compassionate use. Remember the day that Keytruda came out, the first immuno-oncology big drug, and you know that we are Jewish doctors here in the state of Israel. We can't face a patient dying, especially the oncologist, and I don't blame them. I mean, they have to face it. And we had to allow giving it to other indication. At that point, we didn't know that it's working only in certain indications, and we didn't know that it's actually creating two major things. We collected data on the first 250 patients at Tel Aviv Medical Center and the Sheba Medical Center. We collected the data. That was one of the things that we insist on. And we learned very quickly that there are indications where we get zero benefit, and we stopped it. We learned that when the patient is beyond chemotherapy and is going to the hospice, it doesn't work. And we learned about the story of the side effects of pneumonitis, carditis, hepatitis, in this not planned to be study of 250 patients that we gave as a compassionate. But you're right, that's the way it should be done. When it's more than one patient, anecdotal thing, we should collect the data and insist on collecting the data.
I want to mention a such product, if I can may call it, it's the Google patients. Because you mentioned here patients coming with, I don't want to compare with a dead end or with no way to treat the patient with cancer, and they're coming with their own solutions from the States, from Google, I don't know. I don't know how male patients behave, but as a gynecologist, 80% of the patient is coming with their own solution from Google, from unauthorized friends and a family relative, and they insist that I will give them the medicine that they want because they know that this is good for them. And I know it's not good for them. I know that will cause them harm. So it's not the difficult patient that we have, but we also have to care and to look for it every day. And I think it's increasing in side of the patient that we are facing with, and we have, quote unquote, to fight with the patient, not to cause them harm because we shall give them what they want when they are unjustified.
Yes, I agree. If we speak about compassionate use or access program, the monitoring and the data and the adverse effects should be collected. And but you have the problem that there is no, but the real problem, in fact, is that you would prefer to have compassionate use and not clinical trials. And as much as it is possible, it is always better to have a well-designed clinical trials. You exactly knows what you will. First of all, you have the same inclusion and exclusion criteria, and you can really have data that you will be able to use in the future. So that is one problem with compassionate use and expanded access. But again, I can understand the patients that don't want to wait for the end of the clinical trials, and there is nothing there is no treatment for their physical condition. So again, there is this possibility on a basic, on an individual basis to give them this this medicine that they, and you know, we can do it not in a large population, but still this is a possibility. That doesn't mean that it's forbidden, but again and again, where you can conduct a clinical trial, well-designed and well-controlled, it's always, on my opinion, better than data from here and from there.
But we have to take into consideration reality in which you cannot do clinical trials. For example, these days we heard about the Moderna invention of immunizing melanoma in the skin of patients. In this case, you know, you will have to tailor the therapy to individuals, and you won't have prospective, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials. The same story is with the CAR-T therapy. This is an example what we will have in the future, okay? You will have to take the lymphocytes of the patient, reprogram the lymphocytes, give it back in an infusion. In this situation, we will have to face, and this is a conference about the year 2050. Okay, this is going to be our task in IRBs, to find out whether we will find a way to tell specific medications, specific approaches, specific therapies to individuals.
In a moment, I have one secret to tell you. Doing compassionate trials never brought drugs to the market. In the best case for the sponsor, it enabled them then to go to clinical trials. But there is no way to put a drug on the market and make a lot of money out of it just based on compassionate use, and sometimes the sponsors don't understand it, not the big ones. The big ones do understand it very well, and they are very careful not to do it because they don't want to report the side effect that will happen there. But the small companies sometimes make this mistake, so we're not helping them. The future of medicine is going to be completely different. We're going to have a point of care drug making that we're doing with the CAR-T and others. It's going to be personalized. It's going to be done in a different way. There is no question about it, and the trials will have to look different. But nevertheless, collecting the data is critical. But we have a question from the audience, so please, Efrat.
So I want to touch on what...
Oh, they want you to use a microphone because otherwise they can't record you.
So I want to touch on the N equals 1 problem that Professor Berliner mentioned, and when does that move from being research to being clinical care? Because you were describing a situation that's essentially clinical care, right? That every person, is going to get their personal tailored treatment. But so when does that go from research to being clinical? And do you think you would still need an IRB-like process per patient every time for this type of therapy? I mean, that sounds a little complicated.
I think we will need IRBs for in many times, and the situation is going to be a mixed one. Okay, if you will not have enough data about the medication or the therapeutic approach, you will have to consider it with the patient and the family and go to a compassion approach. And still we can learn because, even if the medication is given on a compassion basis, you see the results. Although it is probably not possible to draw any firm conclusion, but yet, if there is an immediate, for example, hypersensitivity reaction, let's say, okay, so you give a medication that was given to 2 patients before, and you are the 3rd one. But you, 1 hour after the infusion, you are in an anaphylactic shock. So you did learn something about the medication without a prospective design study. So nobody is against compassion approaches. Theoretically, we know what is the best. But we have to be realistic because we work in an ambient, in a milieu in which we have severe patients, complicated ones, and we have to navigate between what is desired and what is optimal and what should we do tomorrow morning.
Right, surprisingly, I think I have an answer. Really, first example that you gave, Moderna, they did a study. And when we're talking about personalized medicine, before you start it or after you did few patients, you do a study on the technology. Although each patient will get maybe a little bit different, but the CAR-T was done with studies. And there are 2 types of committees, at least in the medical center that I'm working. One is looking at new treatments, which is not clinical trials. A surgeon wants to do a new surgery. Even they're doing it at Mayo Clinic. He learned there, but that's the first patient he's doing in Israel, and that's a skill. So we have a committee that is applying to this committee. He can't do it without it. And the committee talk about it, think if they want an IRB opinion, they'll ask the IRB opinion. It's not an IRB question. The Ministry of Health, actually, the way we give compassionate use, how do we give it? It's only a mankal, how do you say it? The general director prerogative. And his long arm is to the head of the IRBs, and we have to be smart enough when to call him or call the person that he actually appointed in the Ministry of Health, or when do we think that it's straightforward, and who do we want to consult with? She's right, there are not really strict regulation. It's a lot of common sense of us that has to do it in the right way. And I can tell you that it's, and you need to follow these patients, and you need to follow them for a long period of time. You do something especially in the type of cell therapy. What do you know what will happen in 4 years? We're dealing now with a case that someone was getting cell therapy for a disease, horrible disease. She did much better. She was 2 years old. Now she's 4 years old. And she has a monoclonal type of leukemia. Is it because of the therapy we gave? Is it because of the cells? First, it was sponsored and we stopped it. But we are debating it, all of us. So we are following the patient with compassionate use. I can assure you that at least in the medical center I'm working in, the doctors know that they have to report side effects. They have to follow the patient. But how can you learn from N of 1? Almost nothing. But when it's more than N of 1, you need an IRB committee to approve the whole type of therapy.
Just to refine something, in Israel, when you have an emergency case, you do not need the general director in order to allow the so.
But then you have to report it.
You have to report it, and I think it's important, you know, to and so and when about advanced therapy, we have a quite new mechanism that we still do not use. Is hospital exemptions. That means that it will be more on the individual. It will be, it's really parallel to tailor-made medicines, but still it's not very used in Israel. So I think in the future maybe. And
we have 1 more minute, and Frat, I think she wants to ask more questions, so we let her.
My last question is a more general one to all of you, and that is, what do you view as your greatest challenge serving on IRBs?
My greatest challenge is explaining to doctors that when you do research, it's a different game. When you're a doctor, you are expected to do everything in your power to save your patient, and if you can't have a CT, let's do an ultrasound. There's no ultrasound, maybe an MRI. If we don't have this kind of surgeon, let's do something else. If this has broken, let's try something else. You can't do that in research. In research, you have to do things by protocol, and for me, the most difficult thing is to get doctors to understand that when you do research on human subjects, once they have given informed consent, you can only do exactly what they consented to. Even though, you know, you might want to change your protocol, it's all okay, you can do that, but you have to, it all has to be done by the book. And for me, that's the most difficult thing to explain to doctors and to make them behave that way when doing research.
I think that for me, one of the more complicated things that the sponsors, especially the small biotech companies, come to you with the idea that they know how to help humanity, they know how to help, but they have huge holes on the way before you can even go to the first patient. And that's, especially when the doctors are involved with them, they come as advocate. And you have to tell them that there should be a Chinese wall because you are biased. And you cannot be not biased. So I'm used to say that there is no coalition and no opposition, there is only position. And everybody has a position, and the position is influenced by a lot of things. And if you are involved, if you are the inventor, if you saw it develop from the beginning, you want it to be successful so much that you're getting blind. And that's one of the major things that I felt when I was sitting in the IRB committee in every meeting. Now I don't sit in all of them because we have enough, I have deputies that do that. That was a major thing because they're coming with enthusiasm. They want to save the world. They have a solution and you are blocking them. I promise everybody that we'll end on time. So we are ending on time and thank you very much for being so patient.